I don't know what kind of swipe that is, but they don't have cows. They don't have... Damn, I almost messed it up. I don't know what that is. I just heard it. Can you talk to me? Oh, guys. I do not want to... What was that? What was that? What is that? Hang on a minute. Stop it! Stop it!
One day in September 2025, a stranger ventured into the tranquil jungles of Tasmania. His name was Robert Parkinson. He walked alone into this primeval jungle, a literal graveyard, seeking clues about Saline Kremer, a backpacker who vanished 2 years prior. However, just as he reached his destination, a haunting and wretched cry suddenly echoed from the distance.
That's a really clear and loud.
Parkinson froze. The screech pierced his soul, feeling as if it might shatter him completely. Overwhelmed by sudden terror, he was at a loss. After a brief moment of hesitation, Parkinson swiftly fled the ominous area. Before we start today's story, I hope you can drop a like, share, and subscribe to help me keep updating this channel. Your support means the world to me. Thank you all. Saline Kremer was born in 1992 in Brussels, the capital of Belgium. Even during her teenage years, she had traveled across most of Europe. Kremer loved adventure and was known for her integrity. Since the first half of 2023, she had been traveling through Australia. Traveling to Tasmania was the final stop of her Australian journey. Afterward, she planned to take a ferry to New Zealand. According to her good friend Justin, Kremer enjoyed solo adventures. She had ventured into uncharted jungles multiple times, often staying for days, but she had always returned safely. Fast forward to June 21st, 2023. This was the day she was supposed to depart on the ferry, but the staff never saw Kremer board the ship. According to records, she was last seen on June 17th. Kremer was driving a white Chevrolet SUV and arrived at a place called Philosopher Falls. Philosopher Falls is located in a rainforest in northwestern Tasmania. The falls are named after the explorer James Philosopher Smith, who discovered tin ore at Mount Bischoff, thereby changing the economic fate of the entire island. Looking at the map, the falls are surrounded by dense rainforest. If tourists are just there for sightseeing, it only takes about an hour to hike in and return. But strangely, after Saline Kremer entered the rainforest, she never came back. On June 26th, her family reported her missing to the police. To maximize efficiency, authorities deployed multiple search and rescue assets, including ground and air rescue teams, cadaver dogs, and extensive water searches. However, none of these efforts yielded significant results. The weather in Tasmania is extremely harsh, especially in winter. Low temperatures and frequent rainfall made the search operations highly difficult. The team struggled through complex terrain and extreme weather for over half a month but failed to make any major breakthroughs. Authorities concluded that the chances of Saline Kremer's survival were incredibly slim, and continuing the search might lead to further accidental casualties. The rescue operation was officially called off on July 10th. Afterward, Kremer's friend Justin reached out to a private investigator for help. A detective named Ken Gamble, after reviewing the case, decided to help search for Kremer's remains pro bono. Gamble specializes in solving complex cybercrimes and fraud. He served in the U.S. Army for 3 years and has participated in various search and rescue missions. He possesses excellent physical fitness and rich wilderness survival experience. Upon reviewing the police's search efforts, Gamble realized they might have missed something. He examined the GPS data stored in Creamer's Google account and tracked down her final location. According to the pings, around 4:18 p.m. on June 17th, Creamer appeared on a rainforest plateau near Philosopher Falls. This area is known as the Tarkine Rainforest, and it contained many coordinates that the police had overlooked. Gamble's team remapped over 40 coordinates and discovered that many of these spots had not been searched by authorities. In April 2024, Gamble led his team into the rainforest. He noted that the location where Creamer was last seen was covered in extremely primitive vegetation. It was dark, deep, and deadly silent. Once inside, the canopy blocked out the sun. The terrain was incredibly tangled. An ordinary person couldn't possibly navigate it. You literally have to crawl under massive logs just to push deeper into the rainforest, Gamble said. Along the way, he found a stone signpost. The tablet was severely corroded, but the text on it was still barely legible. It recorded the encounters of early prospectors in the area. More accurately, it was a warning sign. One passage read, "If you see rotting, moss-covered trunks while crossing this field, danger is imminent. You might fall into hidden ravines or be devoured by monsters." The disappearance of our two companions serves as the best proof. Seeing the stone tablet sent chills down Gamble's spine. He suddenly understood why authorities had given up the search for Creamer's remains. He later said, "When you walk in there, it feels bizarre. It's very dark and gives off a bad vibe. It gave me the creeps. It's an ominous place. There could be unknown beasts or hidden sinkholes." Despite this, Gamble did not abandon his search plan. He used thermal imaging and drone tracking cameras to observe the rainforest. One shot showed the location where Creamer had parked her SUV. The cameras also captured wallabies moving by the roadside, which seemed perfectly normal. However, in several other clips, they captured something completely different. In footage taken near some bushes within the Tarkine rainforest, two humanoid creatures were seen moving rapidly through the trees, one after the other. By slowing down the footage, you can see their bent knees and heavily exaggerated movements. Another clip was recorded exactly on the plateau where Creamer disappeared. A humanoid figure could be vaguely seen moving slowly. This is truly unusual and entirely unbelievable. I've been to many primeval jungles, but I've never seen anything like this, Gamble stated. Because Creamer had her location services turned on, her entire route could be tracked. The path mapped by the coordinates showed that she had returned to her parking spot 3 times. After the first 2 returns, she headed off in the same direction. But on her final attempt, she walked in a completely different direction. Her last known location was on this rainforest plateau. It's impossible to determine why Creamer engaged in such strange behavior. When she left the parking lot, you can see intermittent connections, and then it drops off for a long time because she walked into an area with no cell coverage. She suddenly veered off the trail and ran up onto the plateau. I believe she went up there for a specific reason, Gamble noted. Aside from capturing these bizarre clips, the search team found nothing else. As time passed, the operation to find Celine Creamer's remains eventually ground to a halt. In January 2025, a wilderness backpacker named Zachary Hafner claimed that while hiking in the Tarkine rainforest, he found a blue women's t-shirt and a pair of jeans. The clothes were torn to shreds and showed signs of severe damage. Hafner stated that both items of clothing were found stuffed inside a tree hollow. Coincidentally, this tree hollow was located exactly on the plateau where Creamer vanished. However, this information was only posted by him on social media, and to date, this clue has not been verified by authorities. In September 2025, a vlogger named Robert Parkinson, using the coordinates left by Creamer, decided to retrace her path. He wanted to recreate her final steps and deduce the cause of her disappearance. The whole way, it was terrifyingly quiet. Aside from my own footsteps, I couldn't hear a thing. But the further I walked toward the rainforest plateau, I saw more broken branches and massive tree trunks blocking my path. I had to detour or crawl underneath them, Parkinson said. Slash, slash. When he finally reached the plateau, the sounds of insects and birds suddenly filled the air. Then, an enormous roar erupted out of nowhere.
When you're scared for your life, It's really, really hard. You see, if she made it to this creek, it's like 2 k's, I guess, back to the road. Can you hear that? That's a really clear and loud signal.
Leaving Parkinson completely stunned. After hesitating for a moment, he realized that staying there could be dangerous. He briefly filmed his surroundings and swiftly fled the scene. According to Parkinson's account, he had tried to find the tree hollow where the clothes were reportedly hidden. However, the area was simply too vast to cover alone. He did note, however, that he saw many massive hollow tree roots along the way. Regarding the cause of Kremer's disappearance, Tasmanian police believe she either got lost or fell into a hidden sinkhole. They ruled out murder. The spot where Kremer was last seen was incredibly remote, and it's extremely difficult for an ordinary person to even enter the area. If a killer wanted to murder her, the trailhead parking lot would have been the optimal place to strike. There was no reason to stalk her deep into the heart of the rainforest. Furthermore, her belongings weren't stolen. Her backpack, wallet, camera, and other valuables were all left inside her car. She had no known grudges with locals, and suicide was highly unlikely. According to her family and friends, she was planning to visit New Zealand next. She loved life, enjoyed making new friends, and had absolutely no reason to end her life. Another theory suggests that Kremer was killed by an animal hidden in the rainforest. Tasmania, aside from larger mammals like the Forester kangaroo, is home to Tasmanian devils and wombats. However, both of these are small mammals, typically weighing between 8 to 20 kilograms. Although the Tasmanian devil gets its notorious name from its appearance and scavenging habits, it is actually highly unaggressive and poses no real threat to humans. It is worth mentioning that as early as February 22nd, 2023, Kremer posted a photo on social media with a short caption, "Tasmanian Little Devil." She attached a photo of herself holding her hands above her head, mimicking the shape of devil horns. Perhaps she had a special fascination with the mysterious creatures of this region. The final theory connects to a local cryptid legend. Kremer may have been attacked by a Tasmanian ape. The Tasmanian ape is described as a large, fanged humanoid creature. Indigenous legends have long spoken of giant apes roaming the beaches. They reportedly stand between 7 and 8 feet tall, have brown or red hair, glowing red eyes, and emit a pungent stench. They are said to be extremely aggressive. Witnesses claim they can effortlessly rip the head off a wallaby. In citing reports, people describe them like this. When they encounter a human, they usually stand upright and bang sticks against branches as a warning. If they feel threatened, they let out deafening roars. However, under normal circumstances, the apes choose to remain completely hidden. Legend also dictates that in areas where these apes are active, the sudden sounds of insects and birds chirping signal that the creature is about to launch an attack. Based on the footage captured by Gamble's team, it is possible that an undiscovered primate species lives here, perfectly camouflaged in the natural environment and undisturbed by the outside world. Some believe that the Tasmanian ape is actually the Australian Yowie, or perhaps a subspecies of it. Much like the North American Bigfoot, they might exist in varying shapes and fur colors. But aside from the ape, Tasmania holds other mythological creatures, such as the legendary man-eating bunyip and the shape-shifting kelpie. During the 1980s and 90s, sightings of the supposedly extinct Tasmanian wolf, thylacine, were also widely reported. However, aside from the supposed footage of the ape, none of these other unknown creatures have any concrete video or photographic evidence. To this day, these legends continue to draw wave after wave of tourists. It was precisely this aura of wildness and mystery that attracted backpacker Celine Kremer. Kremer once posted a video on social media showing her free-diving tens of meters into the ocean without an oxygen tank to interact with sharks. She displayed superhuman physical fitness and sheer willpower. She had traveled extensively across Europe and Australia on her own. Perhaps it was these very experiences that made her overly confident in her hiking abilities, ultimately leading to tragedy. To this day, the disappearance of Celine Kremer remains unsolved. It has left us with far too many mysteries. What was her true purpose in entering the rainforest plateau? Is the footage recorded by Gamble and Parkinson authentic? Do the clothes found by backpacker Hafner actually belonged to Kremer? And why were they stuffed inside a tree hollow? And what about that horrifying warning stone? Everything about this place is incredibly bizarre. On June 9th, 2013, 51-year-old Dale Steeling mysteriously vanished in Mesa Verde National Park, Colorado. 7 years later, on September 17th, 2020, his remains were discovered by an anonymous hiker on a low-lying mesa in the Montezuma Valley, about 6 miles from where he initially disappeared. By the time he was found, Dale had been reduced to a pile of bones. Not far from the remains, investigators located his glasses, cell phone, and ID. Chillingly, several massive footprints were also discovered in the immediate vicinity. When authorities finally examined Dale's phone, they uncovered utterly bizarre and terrifying contents. Given that the disappearance occurred near ancient Native American ruins, wild speculations quickly turned this tragic case into a bizarre, paranormal mystery. The disappearance. Dale Steeling, originally from Texas, was a devoted family man who shared 5 children with his wife, Diane. He worked diligently as a meat cutter at a processing company, and thanks to his sociability and hard work, had recently been promoted to marketing manager. Friends and colleagues described Dale as mild-mannered and deeply loyal. Standing at 6 feet tall, 1.82 meters, with piercing eyes and a thick beard, he was easily recognizable in a crowd. In June 2013, Dale decided to take his wife and parents-in-law on a cross-country RV road trip. On June 9th, the 4th day of their journey, they were heading toward New Mexico after visiting the Canyon de Chelly National Monument in Arizona. Suddenly, their RV broke down. Forced to wait for repairs near Mesa Verde National Park, the family decided to kill time by visiting the park, specifically targeting the Spruce Tree House ruins. Mesa Verde National Park, located in western Colorado, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that preserves some of the most intact ancestral Puebloan ruins in the United States. Spanning 5,248 acres and featuring over 600 cliff dwellings, it is a crucial archaeological treasure. The ancestral Puebloans, a Native American culture of the Southwest, were renowned for their adobe and stone architecture, dating back over 1,300 years. The legends of the forest. According to ancient indigenous folklore, these forests are home to giant, hairy ape-like creatures. Legends say these beasts are shapeshifters, capable of transforming into animals or humans to deceive hunters, only revealing their true, monstrous forms when struck by an arrow. It is said these creatures can turn invisible instantly and teleport across distances. To the ancients, these hairy behemoths were interdimensional beings, a bridge between humanity and nature. However, in the lore of other North American tribes, the Sasquatch, or Bigfoot, is a symbol of evil, known to abduct children and attack lone hunters. It is said that if you are walking alone in the woods and hear a strange melodic whistling, you must beware. It is their hypnotic lullaby, designed to lure you off the trail. Due to the rocky cliffs of the region, ancient peoples carved images of these creatures into the rock walls, referring to them as rock apes. Into the unknown. At 4:30 p.m. that afternoon, Dale was captivated by a distant ancient ruin. He told his wife Diane that he was going to hike up to the site alone. Oddly, Dale didn't take the main path. He opted for a rugged, isolated trail, perhaps thinking it would be a shortcut. It was a steep, narrow 4.2-mile loop trail, where one misstep over jutting rocks could send a hiker plummeting into the canyon below. Before he left, Deanne asked if he wanted to take a bottle of water. He declined, insisting he would be back shortly. Along the way, another tourist accidentally captured a photo of Dale walking down the trail. After his silhouette disappeared around a bend, he was never seen alive again. An hour passed. Growing anxious, Diane called her husband's phone, but he didn't answer. She then contacted park management, who told her not to panic and assured her Dale would likely return soon. After another hour passed with no sign of him, Diane called the police. The search and the Discovery Park Rangers and local police immediately formed search and rescue teams, scouring the canyon. The intensive search lasted 2 full weeks. At its peak, the operation utilized 60 searchers, 2 K-9 units, a helicopter, and a cliff-climbing rope team. Although the park isn't massive, many archaeological zones are entirely off-limits to the public and remain rugged and untouched. The treacherous terrain made the search incredibly difficult. "We conducted massive sweeps of the area," the local sheriff stated. In November, we sent another K-9 team out to look for his remains, but we found nothing. I still keep Dale Staling's photo and case files on my wall. The park sees about 5 to 10 missing persons a year, but Dale's case is by far the most bizarre I've ever encountered. If he fell off a cliff and got wedged between rocks, even a helicopter wouldn't be able to spot him. Fast forward to September 17th, 2020. An anonymous hiker reported finding skeletal remains in the Montezuma Valley. Authorities rushed to the scene and confirmed it was Dale Stealing. The chilling phone records. When investigators recovered Dale's phone, they checked his digital footprint. Call logs showed he attempted to make a call around 7 p.m. on the day he vanished, but it failed to connect. He then tried to leave a voicemail, which also failed to send. It was clear he was in an absolute dead zone for cell reception. But it was the photos gallery that truly baffled investigators. The first few pictures showed Dale navigating the steep loop trail, documenting the jagged rocks and the bottomless canyon below. But as the photos progressed, they grew unsettling. One photo showed he had wandered deep into the thick forest, capturing a massive, uprooted tree. Another showed what looked like a giant footprint. Subsequent photos depicted swampy terrain and a running stream, indicating Dale was desperately hiking miles off trail, likely trying to follow water to survive. Then came the final photo, time-stamped at 7:30 p.m. The light was fading. In the frame, standing directly in front of Dale in the shadows of the trees, was a dark, towering humanoid figure. Though blurry, a hairy, ape-like creature could be made out in the dim light. Even more terrifying were 2 short video clips discovered on the memory card, clips that seemed to document the final desperate moments of Dale's ordeal. The first video showed him wandering along a dark, heavily wooded path, the camera shaking as he struggled to find his way. The forest around him was unnaturally still, the trees forming a suffocating canopy overhead. In the background, an eerie, overlapping whistling sound echoed through the trees, rising and falling in strange, almost coordinated patterns. It didn't resemble wind or any known animal call. It sounded deliberate, as if something unseen was signaling from the shadows. In the second video, the situation escalated into something far more disturbing. Dale appeared increasingly panicked, breathing hard as he turned the camera over his shoulder. For a split second, he accidentally captured a dark, humanoid figure moving between the trees, keeping pace with him. The creature's outline was tall and unnaturally thin, its movements quick and deliberate. Moments later, it hurled a large rock in his direction. The stone crashed into the nearby stream with a violent splash, narrowly missing him. Dale's startled shout cut through the footage before the clip abruptly ended. Theories and speculations police quickly ruled out foul play. The area where Dale's remains were found was a restricted archaeological zone. The hiker who discovered the bones had been trespassing, which is why they chose to remain anonymous. Furthermore, Dale's phone and personal belongings had not been stolen. The official law enforcement theory posits that Dale slipped on the rugged terrain. Because he had undergone multiple back surgeries, he walked with a hunched posture and an awkward gait. Navigating an unforgiving wilderness alone would be incredibly dangerous for an older man with mobility issues. Police believe that after losing cell service, Dale tried to follow a low-lying waterway, but wandered deep into an uncharted primeval forest. The photos were likely taken as an attempt to track his location between his disappearance at 4:30 p.m. and the timestamp on his final photograph at 7:30 p.m. Dale had been moving for roughly 3 continuous hours. During that time, he covered an astonishing 6 miles, approximately 9.6 kilometers, across unforgiving mountain terrain. The route to Montezuma Valley was anything but gentle. It consisted of steep elevation changes, loose rock, dense forest sections, and uneven ground that would challenge even experienced hikers in full daylight. For someone already disoriented and possibly injured, that pace and distance are difficult to comprehend. It suggests either sheer desperation or a frantic attempt to escape whatever he believed was behind him. As for the cause of death, speculation has never ceased. Some investigators and locals believe he ultimately succumbed to exposure, dehydration, and starvation after becoming lost and physically depleted. Mountain weather can shift rapidly. In nighttime, temperatures in higher elevations drop sharply, increasing the risk of hypothermia. Others suspect a darker possibility, that Dale was stalked by a wild predator and attacked after collapsing from exhaustion. In such remote wilderness areas, scavenging animals can quickly obscure evidence. Despite these competing theories, no definitive forensic conclusion was ever reached, leaving the circumstances of his death unresolved and deeply unsettling. However, renowned cryptozoologist and biologist Dr. Elizabeth Sharper proposed a much more shocking theory. Dale's death was directly linked to Colorado's legendary rock apes. For a long time, it was believed only chimpanzees could mimic human whistling, Dr. Sharper explained. But numerous sighting reports suggest that Bigfoot-like creatures will whistle before throwing rocks as a threat and a warning. This spontaneous whistling in a natural environment sets them apart from known primates. Dr. Sharper further linked this to recent sightings, such as an incident on October 8, 2023, when passengers on the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad spotted a brown Sasquatch walking on a hillside. The creature suddenly crouched down and seemingly vanished, blending perfectly into the environment. The ancestral Puebloans described these creatures as having the ability to turn invisible. This is likely an extreme form of camouflage, Sharper noted. He argued that while ancient myths often amplify reality through symbolism, they tend to preserve a core observation. In this case, he suggested the legends may reflect the creature's extraordinary situational awareness and environmental adaptation. According to Sharper, hypervigilance, an almost preternatural sensitivity to movement, sound, and human presence, could allow such a being to evade detection so consistently that witnesses interpret the disappearance as literal invisibility. Some theorists take the idea even further, aligning the Puebloan belief in interdimensional travel with modern fringe hypotheses about anomalous phenomena. They draw comparisons to certain UFO reports, in which objects appear to vanish instantly, allegedly by shifting vibrational frequency or manipulating electromagnetic fields. Extending that analogy, proponents speculate these creatures might generate localized magnetic distortions or possess biological mechanisms beyond current scientific classification. Such mechanisms, they argue, could interfere with human sensory processing, bending light, altering perception, or exploiting neurological blind spots, so that observers quite literally cannot register their presence. While no empirical evidence substantiates these claims, the convergence of folklore, witness testimony, and speculative physics continues to fuel debate. A heartbreaking conclusion. Regardless of whether he encountered the supernatural or the brutal reality of nature, Dale's story ends in tragedy. He was always the one to solve tough problems and put our family at ease, his sister recalled. He was always helping neighbors mow their lawns or fix their gardens. Despite his physical pains, Dale was an incredibly tough man. It is believed that Dale purposely avoided calling his wife too many times so as not to cause her panic, trusting his own resilience to find a way out of the woods. But ultimately, human willpower could not conquer the unforgiving wilderness. According to the National Park Service, much of Mesa Verde outside the main roads remains totally untamed, with many areas strictly off limits. The most heartbreaking piece of evidence came when police recovered one final unsent text message drafted on Dale's phone. When his family read it, they broke down in tears. It simply read, "Don't look for me. I might not make it back. Take care of the family."
On July 12, 2010, 57-year-old Robert Bissell left his home in Portland, Oregon for a camping and fishing trip in the Mount Hood National Forest. But shortly after arriving at his destination, he vanished without a trace. The subsequent search turned up a trail of baffling clues, culminating in a series of photographs that suggested Robert had been taken by something deep in the woods. Searchers didn't just find his clothes and gear, they found a gruesome scene. A human leg bone dangling from a tree branch. It was a discovery that left seasoned investigators chilled to the bone. Today, I'll be walking you through one of the most terrifying and mysterious missing persons cases in Oregon's history. Before we dive into the story, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you all for your support. Robert Bissell lived in Portland with his brother Michael and their mother. He was an introvert who loved his solitude, often avoiding crowds by heading deep into the forest on weekdays and returning home on the weekends. With decades of outdoor experience under his belt, Robert was no stranger to the wilderness. He was especially fond of night fishing, and because he knew the dangers of the deep woods, he always carried a handgun for protection. On July 12th, Robert submitted a wilderness permit, stating his plan to camp in the Rock Lakes area of the Mount Hood National Forest. He told his family he would return by July 16th. The Rock Lakes campsite is nestled within the Roaring River Wilderness, a massive 36,000-acre basin forest in the Cascade Mountains. True to its name, the area is dotted with rocky bodies of water, including upper, middle, and lower Rock Lakes. The waters are deep, reaching up to 34 feet and teeming with trout, making it a paradise for anglers. However, the terrain is notoriously rugged and completely surrounded by mountains. Campers have to park outside the perimeter and hike in on foot. Because of this, it remains one of Oregon's best-kept secrets, largely untouched and isolated. When July 16th rolled around, Robert failed to return home. Worried that his brother had suffered an accident, Michael drove up to Mount Hood to look for him. He found Robert's car parked at the Rock Lakes trailhead and immediately hiked the trail toward the campsite. Eventually, he found Robert's tent. It was completely empty. Inside, a sleeping pad, an unboxed camp stove, and a backpack were scattered about. However, Robert's headlamp, fishing gear, and handgun were nowhere to be found. At first, Michael assumed his brother was just out fishing by the lake, but as he looked closer, something felt incredibly off. There were no signs that anyone had actually lived at the camp. No extinguished campfire, no food scraps, nothing. The forest around him was completely devoid of sound. It was a dead, heavy silence. By this point, Robert had been in the woods for 4 days, making this lack of activity highly alarming. Before leaving, Michael left a note inside the tent that read, "Your family is very worried about you. Please come home as soon as you see this." Michael then checked the neighboring lakes and asked other hikers if they had seen Robert, but no one had. Trusting his brother's extensive survival skills, Michael headed home, but the days passed, and Robert never came back. On July 24th, an anxious Michael returned to the campsite. The car hadn't moved. The gear inside the tent was exactly as he had left it, and his note remained completely untouched. The next day, July 25th, Michael contacted the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office to officially report his brother missing. The Sheriff's Office immediately mobilized a search and rescue team, setting up a command center right near the campsite. They started by searching Robert's car, finding only a few suitcases and miscellaneous items in the trunk. Next, investigators examined the tent. They quickly realized Robert had never actually slept in it. His new camping stove was still in its packaging, and his cookware was spotless. Police, agreeing with Michael's initial thought, theorized that Robert had pitched his tent and immediately headed out for a night fishing session. Inside the tent, searchers found notes tracking the recent weather, a map of the deep forest, and the names of 2 specific locations jotted down, Serene Lake and Shining Lake. This proved Robert had carefully planned his trip and intended to hop between several different lakes in the area. The initial search covered a 500-yard radius around the campsite. Searchers soon found a yellow storage box resting on a log, which contained a compass and a whistle. A second team, hiking along a ridge trail toward Shining Lake, discovered a gray shirt and a camo hat. When shown the clothing, Michael wasn't entirely sure if they belonged to his brother. Meanwhile, a third team heading toward Serene Lake ran into a group of hikers who handed over a green wool sock they had found on the trail. By the end of the day, over 100 people were involved in the search, covering a 1-mile radius around the camp. Every piece of potential evidence was photographed and documented. On July 26th, the second day of the search, a rubber band, similar in size to one found in Robert's car, was discovered in the Cripple Creek area. That same day, the sheriff's office received a bizarre phone call from a woman claiming to be a psychic. She told police that Robert was lying in a rocky, barren area with no vegetation, possibly a dried-up riverbed, somewhere near Serene Lake. Surprisingly, authorities took the tip seriously. They dispatched an aerial team to survey the area and even assigned a deputy to work directly with the psychic, a highly unusual move for law enforcement. On July 28th, a major breakthrough occurred. A hiker contacted authorities, stating that he and his wife had crossed paths with an older man descending a ridge near the lake trail. The description was highly specific. A man in his 50s, about 5 feet 10 inches, with a medium-length beard, carrying a blue backpack with a sleeping bag attached. The man had asked the couple for directions to Serene Lake. The encounter happened on July 13th, the day after Robert arrived at his campsite. This sighting confirmed the police's theory. Robert hadn't slept in his tent. He had hiked straight into the night to fish, and, unfamiliar with the labyrinth of lakes, spent the next day wandering the basin, trying to find his way to Serene Lake. Later that same day, 2 deputies and the psychic were navigating the rugged, rock-strewn path toward Serene Lake, a route so treacherous it is incredibly difficult to traverse without knowing the area. One of the deputies spotted a faded black headband resting on a pile of rocks. Shortly after, further down the brushy trail, a deputy spotted a fishing pole propped up against some bushes. But when he looked up, he saw a scene straight out of a nightmare. Hanging high up on a tree branch was a human leg bone. It was still attached to scraps of muscle tissue and stained with blood. Directly beneath it on the ground sat a single hiking boot. Authorities immediately contacted Michael Bissell. While he couldn't positively identify the boot on site, he checked Robert's room back home and found an identical pair. They were Vask Sundowner boots. Investigators contacted REI, confirming that Robert had been an REI co-op member since 1977 and had purchased that exact model of boot in 2001.
DNA testing would later confirm the horrific truth. The leg bone dangling in the tree belonged to Robert Bissell. But here is where the story takes a deeply unsettling turn. The investigators who had scoured that exact location earlier in the search swore that the fishing pole had not been there. It appeared as though someone, or something, had recently placed it there on purpose. Dozens of search teams descended on the site where the remains were found, combing every inch of the surrounding woods. Yet, they found absolutely nothing else of value. After analyzing the scattered items, police confirmed that the fishing pole, the Vask boot, the leg bone, and the yellow tackle box belonged to Robert. The other items did not. Investigators managed to piece together a rough timeline. On July 12th, Robert parked his car, hiked in, set up his tent, and immediately took his backpack, sleeping bag, food, and fishing gear out into the night. Unfamiliar with the terrain, he got turned around while trying to navigate the interconnected lakes. On July 13th, he asked hikers for directions to Serene Lake, eventually making his way there. And that is where he met his end. But the lingering, terrifying question remained. What exactly happened to him? How is he so brutally dismembered? And why did his killer essentially display his remains? Robert was a quiet, poor, and reclusive man. He had no known enemies, making human foul play highly unlikely. Naturally, the focus shifted to animal attacks. Black bears, coyotes, and cougars all inhabit the Mount Hood forest. However, unprovoked attacks by these animals on adult humans are incredibly rare. Furthermore, search teams found no signs of bear or wolf activity in the immediate area. If an animal had simply attacked him, his backpack and the rest of his remains should have been nearby, not completely vanished. Some suggested a cougar, mountain lion, was responsible. Cougars are known to drag their prey up into trees to keep it away from scavengers like bears. But again, cougar attacks on humans are exceedingly rare, and Robert was armed with a handgun. Most baffling of all was the state of the leg bone itself. The medical examiner noted a terrifying lack of animal bite marks or gnawing. The muscle tissue hadn't been torn away by teeth. It looked as though it had been cleanly stripped off by a sharp tool or immense, precise force. Given how far apart Robert's belongings were found, it suggested he either ran frantically through the forest before dying, or his body was dragged and moved after death. As for the rest of his body and his missing gear, they remain hidden somewhere in the vast Oregon wilderness. When the details of the case hit the internet, it ignited a firestorm of speculation. Oregon has a rich history of cryptid folklore, and many wondered if Robert had fallen victim to an unknown predator. With its massive ancient forests, alpine lakes, and deep isolation, some locals whispered about lake monsters that supposedly drag anglers into the depths, consuming them and spitting their bones back onto the shore.
But the most popular, albeit controversial, theory online is that Robert was killed by a Sasquatch, or Bigfoot. Oregon and neighboring Washington state are the undisputed capitals of Bigfoot sightings in North America. Cryptid enthusiasts point out that these alleged creatures are highly territorial and primarily nocturnal. If Robert was wandering the deep woods alone at night, he would be at his most vulnerable. Could a massive, intelligent primate have ambushed him, stripped the flesh from his bone, and hung it in a tree as a territorial warning? While this theory is purely speculative and lives in the realm of internet lore, the actual facts of the case leave the door open to wild imaginations. Because ultimately, the most horrifying aspect of this case is the deliberate staging of the scene. Someone, or something, stripped the flesh from Robert's leg, hung the bone high in a tree, and then moved his fishing pole to mark the spot. Was it a human killer, playing a sick game with the police? Was it an animal behaving in a way science can't explain? Or was it something else entirely, a warning to humanity from the deep woods? Today, 16 years later, the death and disappearance of Robert Bissell remains a chilling, unsolved mystery. In the deep wilderness of North America, people vanish in bizarre ways, leaving behind no clues, no bodies, and no logical explanations. Most of these cases eventually fade away, becoming nothing more than cold statistics, forgotten by the world.